Hello, Jonathan. Right, can you open? So, upper left, 7 presents.
How's the shooting going?
Oh, very well actually. We've actually got the Bisley meeting coming up in a week's time, which is our centenary. It all started with Queen Victoria, and it is the Sovereign's Prize, the competition to win. It's the honour of winning it. It's quite an honour. And just relax. Not very pleasant.
Martin Kent, dentist and international target shooter. Like thousands of marksmen and women around the world, he has just one target in mind, the Queen's Prize. Older than golf's Open, football's FA Cup or Wimbledon tennis, this is the highlight of Bisley's 100th birthday celebrations. Some 2,000 competitors from 30 countries take part in 2 weeks of national and international events, many of them camping out among the maples and chestnuts on 2,000 acres of land devoted to a dozen or so ranges with legendary names like Short Siberia and Stickledown, and the vast Century Range with its original 100 targets, now expanded to 108, the biggest of its kind in the world. 1990 marks the centenary of shooting at Bisley, so the Lord Lieutenant of Surrey steps up to repeat the ceremonial firing of the first shot by Princess Alexandra, the Princess of Wales, back on July the 12th, 1890. A bullseye, of course. With the .303 caliber Lee Metford magazine rifle sitting solidly on a rest, the Lord Lieutenant, like Her Royal Highness 100 years before, just couldn't miss. Given the royal seal of approval, the success of Bisley was assured. The imperial meeting was a jewel in the social calendar, attracting the cream of British society, alongside Henley, Ascot and Cowes. But although Bisley Camp is 100 years old, the National Rifle Association dates back to 1860, when Queen Victoria herself made a significant contribution to the sport. Inaugurating the first NRA meeting on Wimbledon Common in London, she was so amused by hitting the bullseye, same silk cord, same rest, that she donated £250, a small fortune in those days, for an annual competition, the Queen's Prize. The Queen's Prize has the added tradition of chairing the winner off the range. Back in 1890, the veteran Sergeant Bates bested 2,319 entrants to win the gold badge at the first Bisley meeting. Winners still depend on friends with broad shoulders. Even after the ranges were moved out of London a century ago, eminent Victorians continued to enjoy the equivalent of corporate hospitality, banqueting in refreshment pavilions with ladies dressed in the height of fashion. And they arrived from London by train, using not just one but 2 stations aboard the Bisley Bullet, which ran right up to 1952. Originally, target shooting was encouraged for national defence. Poet laureate Lord Tennyson in 1859 warned, "There's a sound of thunder afar, storm of battle and thunder of war," exhorting, "Ready, be ready against the storm, rifleman, rifleman, rifleman form." That connection continues today, but for regimental rather than battle honours. Although servicemen rarely win the Queen's Prize, Prize nowadays, they do compete in their own championship, which also attracts competitors from all over the world. And that overseas interest is encouraged by the Special Challenge Trophy, awarded by the Sultan of Oman for the highest placed competitor who is not a subject of the Queen. In the early days, competition was limited to volunteer riflemen, so the winners of the Queen's Prize were all military men. Private Edward Ross was just 19 when he won the first Queen's Prize in 1860. By contrast, Sergeant Bates had to wait until he was 48 before winning the Queen's Prize for the first time at Bisley in 1890. This is still a sport for young and old, men and women, and among the youngest entrants for the Queen's Prize in 1990, 15-year-old David Murray from Gresham School in Norfolk. 100 years ago, he'd have been a drummer boy, but today is his second Bisley.
I think the Queen's Prize is really the major competition in the football world. It's every shooter's dream to sit on the chair, being the winner, and get carried through the clubs. There's a £250 prize and all the honour that goes with it, really. But I think if someone can actually get their name up on the board saying they've got it, that's a real achievement. And I'd like to think that I'll get my name on that board one day. It's such an old sport. It's been going so long now. It's one of the oldest sports in Britain, I suppose. It's older than Wimbledon tennis, which is where this was first based. Going around the trophy room, I often go there, and you do get a sense of the oldness of the place.
But shooting today is no passing schoolboy hobby or pastime. For most, it's a lifelong fascination, even infatuation.
The thing about dentistry is that it's the stress side. You learn to cope with stress more. I think it's a slightly stressful job, and coping with stress is beneficial to shooting. If you're in a sort of a tie shoot or in a really tough competition, then you manage to learn to cope with stress, I think. Once you're into it, you're hooked. It's you haven't got a chance then. You're shooting for life. It's like skiing. Excuse me a minute, I've just got a big finger.
Chief Fulton and Son? Yes, hello. Yeah. Now then, I've rung them up and got the availability, etc.
As old as Bisley itself is the world-famous firm of G.E. Fulton and Son.
1,400 dead.
As target rifle specialists, they've provided the rifles and shooting equipment to practically all the leading shots around the world for the past 100 years.
Right, well, we'll specify.
And what's more, the Fulton family itself has a shooting record that is quite unique in the sport's history. In 1888, Private George Fulton won the Queen's Prize and decided to use the money to set up a shop in the centre of the new Bisley Camp. His son Arthur grew up to be the finest shot in the world, winning the Queen's Prize 3 times, 1912, 1926 and 1931. His son Robin went on to win the Queen's Prize in 1958. But now Roger Millard runs the armourer's shop that's open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 50 weeks of the year.
Well, it's evolved. I mean, if it hadn't been for the pressure put on us by shooters, we would still be shooting brown bess and martinis and things like that. Rifles that you see about us really show the history of our country here. We've got a brown bess on the wall from the days of Waterloo, martinis from the South African War. The Pax Britannica enforced by the sort of thing that we got here. Number 4's the service rifle, SMLEs, thousands used in the First War. And I always think of them as being used to mark their owners' graves, stuck into the ground by the bayonet with a steel helmet on top. Bit of a poignant thought, the old SMLE. It's everybody's favourite. I think those that have got favourites, it's the vintage type rifle.
The SMLE short magazine Lee Enfield, or Smelly as it was nicknamed, was the most accurate weapon of its day on the range and in battle. Arthur Fulton used his target shooting accuracy to deadly effect in the trenches of northern France during the First World War.
800 yards away, iron sight, no telescope. Poor old Fritz sitting there, writing the letter home, all quiet on the Western Front, mum and bump. Good night, Vienna.
Nowadays, non-service pattern rifles are used for target shooting, specialist equipment for specialist disciplines that range from match rifle to moving targets, but with room still for enthusiasts to fire the muzzle-loading black powder rifles of the 19th century. At Fulton's, they've worked on them all. But with the biggest prize in the sport on the horizon, triumph can depend on the finest of adjustments. So close to the fierce competition, the peace of Bisley Camp is hard to believe. But here in the Surrey countryside are echoes of another age, perhaps the Indian hill stations of the Raj. Colonial bungalows with deep verandas giving shade and relaxation on Club Row. Rifle clubs are really a home from home on the range, a place to sleep, somewhere to meet friends, offer congratulations or seek consolation. Lloyd's Bank Clubhouse is in the old railway station. Members sleep out in the carriage. The English 20, the North London, the London and Middlesex, the City, all are fierce rivals, but warm hosts. And in the prestigious Canadian Pavilion celebrates the annual visit of the Queen's Prize winner, the ancient cannon roars out its approval. Schools have their own competition for the Ashburton Shield, and the pupils of Gresham's even have their own special dormitories. David Murray stays on to make final preparation for tomorrow's Queen's One. That's the first day of competition in the Bisley Centenary Queen's Prize.
Well, all it is really is a piece of machinery. But I mean, it's got to be treated well. I think after a while it becomes more of a friend than a piece of machinery. I mean, a shooter's rifle is very personal to him.
The clubs open their doors to the overseas challengers who've come from the USA and Hong Kong, the Caribbean and Africa. Old friends are there from Europe, talking to Canadians, Australians and New Zealanders about deeds past and their hopes for the next day. Although Martin Kent only lives down the road, he prefers to stay in camp during competition. Like 1,600 other hopeful entrants for the Queen's Prize, Martin daydreams about that historic ride in the chair.
I would like it very much, yes. Everybody tries for that. And you've got to have a bit of luck with you. You've got to be able to read the wind really well, shoot well, and if everything's going for you, you'll be there.
The first stage, known as Queen's 1, is shot on Century Range over 3 distances, starting at 300 yards, then 500, and finally 600 yards. Each competitor has 7 shots to count at each distance, with 5 points for every shot in the bullseye. Of the 1,600 who start the day, only the 300 highest scorers will qualify for Queen's 2. David has shot from 300 yards, and now, like the rest of the field, he goes to help out in the butts, marking for his rivals. Despite showing good form early on at Bisley, he gets away to a slow start in the Queen's Prize.
No, I'm a competitor.
You do as well?
Yeah.
Wow, well done. How are you doing?
I got 33.
Tidy? Me, but what?
Well, I've been shooting really well. I'm in George's too
Oh, good.
at the moment, so
What was that? 73, 74?
73, 10.
Yeah, tidy.
The competitors move back to 500 yards. As one group shoots, the second group rests, and the third marks in the butts. Martin Kent has made a good start and is confident that he'll qualify for Queen's 2, the second day, the second round of the sport's most cherished prize. Between stages, some sleep, some sunbathe, and some chat. Anything to relax.
When are you going back?
Home? Sunday. I'm going to Sheffield by coach. Then I'm going to Canada shooting. I'm going on first.
Now David takes his turn at shooting from 500 yards in one of the few sports where young and old can compete literally shoulder to shoulder.
It's one of those sports where sort of old competitors and new competitors can get the same scores and do the same kind of thing. And there's no malice about it or anything. I mean, obviously, older shooters like to think they'd be better. But I honestly don't think that there's much difference.
With the 500 over, David checks out the progress of his schoolmates as the pressure to qualify grows.
How'd you do?
35.
35?
Yeah, how about you?
33-4 again. Exactly the same way. I dropped them.
God.
So I've got to get either a possible or a 34 here.
As the competitors move back 100 yards over the heath, it's the moment of truth. 7 shots at 600 yards will decide which of the original 1,600 entrants will make it to the next stage. Roger Millard of Fulton's has backed young David to be one of the lucky 300. David is on target 52. Some bulls, some aberrations. For young David, the 1990 Queen's is over.
And after that I got Linna. Still went to pot really. So I'm out of the Queen's.
But there's no time for regrets. In this, the centenary year, celebrations go hand in hand with competition. Although women have competed at Bisley since 1891, Marjorie Foster is the only one to have captured the Queen's prize. That was back in 1930. But Jane Messer, who has shot for England, emphasises that the technique for men and women is exactly the same.
Well, I'm here at the 300-yard firing point at Century Range, and I'm going to show you how to fire a shot. The first thing you have to do is to make yourself comfortable, and having got into position, you have to hook on a sling which gives you support from your arm to the rifle and helps to take the weight of the rifle down that line. One of the biggest problems that shooters face is judging what the wind is. Obviously, if it's absolutely still, you can just fire the rifle, and ideally you should go straight into the centre of the bullseye. It usually isn't. On a day like today, wind's blowing out, it's quite a strong breeze, and I would say that that was something like 2 minutes of wind. We judge minutes in minutes of angle, wind in minutes of angle, and we have a vernier on the sights which tells us how to alter it. So for 2 minutes I just wind the sights 4 clicks to the minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 clicks to the right, and now I can just aim at the target. The important point now is to get your breathing right. As you breathe in and out, the rifle end of the barrel moves up and down over the target. If you breathe in, it goes down, and as you breathe out, it comes up over the target, and then you just hold it there and fire.
But rifles are not the only firearms in regular use on the ranges at Bisley.
My name's Colour Sergeant Pete Bloom from the Royal Marine Shooting Team, and I've got here an interesting weapon from the turn of the century. About 100 years ago, a Colonel Fosbury, who distinguished himself by getting a VC in the Indian Mutiny, designed this weapon, the Webley Fosbury. At first it might look like an ordinary revolver, but in fact it's the only self-cocking or semi-automatic revolver ever made. And by cocking the hammer back and firing the first shot, the recoil of the round actually forces back on the top and recocks the hammer and turns the cylinder around for the next shot to be fired. These grooves in the side operate the cylinder, and it was found in the First World War that these clogged up with mud, and the officers that took them to war with them discarded them. Nowadays they're very much a collector's item and worth a lot of money, although they're still shot today on these ranges in the classic matches. This is one of the many pistol disciplines that we do at Bisley, and it's called the advancing man. It's unusual for me to do this particular discipline with this pistol, although it does seem to hold its own against its modern contemporaries.
Are you ready?
Of course, Pete Bloom is a military man using military targets.
Fire!
Martin Kent goes for breakfast at his club, the Surrey. It's the start of Queen's 2, and the best 300 short-range target shooters will be in action. Again, 3 distances, 300, 500 and 600 yards will decide who goes forward to the final round at long range, the Queen's 100. As Martin goes through the motions of eating, he muses over a career highlighted by his 1984 win in the Save and Prosper St George's Vase. After a 2-year break to be with his young family, he's back for one of the hottest fortnights on record. This, combined with awkward winds, proving to be a searching test of stamina and concentration. Today, the wind is stiff, blowing from right to left across Century Range, but Martin's luck is in. In each round, his firing point is progressively more sheltered, moving further and further to the right. At 600 yards, he has the best position of all, shielded by the woods on the far right-hand side of the range, the wind giving him fewer problems of adjustment. David Murray watches and learns, dreaming of what might have been, but already looking forward to next year. At the far left of the range, where the low numbers are, shooters battle with the very strong winds. The best scores will come from the other end of the range. Martin is into the final, the Queen's 100. His name on shooting's honour roll for the second time.
On the right-hand side, range 19, I was protected from the wind. So, if you like, the deviation of my shots with the wind was something like maybe 6 inches. Whereas the other competitors, down further on the range, they'd be moving maybe 5.5 minutes, which is like 4 feet deviation due to the wind variation. That's a great difference.
Many shooters visit Bisley just once a year for a couple of weeks. But work on the huge estate never stops. Bisley is famous, of course, for its shooting, but less well known is its contribution to Ecology's record books. Estate manager Tony Barrow looks after a unique collection of flora and fauna that goes virtually unknown and unheeded by the thousands who shoot here every year.
Well, we're on Stickledown Range now, and you can see behind me the extent of the area of this range. We're just behind the 1,000-yard firing point. Stickledown goes back to 1,200 yards, but the danger area goes back as far as the eye can see, to the crest of the far hills, being demanded by range safety. Now, all that area behind the stop butt at the far end, you can see, is, to all intents and purposes, completely closed off to human beings. And so the wildlife there has effectively remained undisturbed for 100 years.
Over on Century Range, the strong sporting bonds with the Commonwealth are reinforced in a most unusual way. It's enough to make a botanist blink.
You see this rather extraordinary looking plant here. I understand it's an Australian sundew, sort of Venus flytrap. I can only assume that it was introduced onto the range by an Australian shooter, perhaps in the welts of his boots. It's the only one we found. It survives the winters here perfectly well.
And high above this secret garden, an aircraft circles. Part of the Bisley centenary celebrations. The Red Devils aiming to show that they can hit their targets with the same accuracy as the marksmen and women far below.
He's from 2 power and is on instructor. Cool studs. 2 power, instructor, 1,000 jumps. There we have.
Simon Belitha, arguably the finest shot in the world. For the past 2 years, he's won Bisley's Grand Aggregate, perhaps the toughest test of them all, where the winners decided over a series of competitions with consistency the key.
The Grand Aggregate effectively equates to the League Championship in the football world, and the Queen's to the FA Cup. It's a succession of long, hard matches.
But Belitha's hat-trick bid is frustrated. There's a tie shoot between a Canadian and a Briton. While policeman Alain Marion has twice won the Queen's Prize, the Grand Aggregate has always eluded him. But today is his day. After twice being runner-up, he beats Larry Orpen Smelly to win the Land Rover Grand Aggregate.
Oh! Good shooting, Alain.
How are you?
Great.
How did you do?
No, he doesn't need a sign now.
60
No, he's not going to be
Good shoot. Thank you.
Okay.
Good shoot, Alain. Congratulations. Good shoot. Well done, Alain.
Meanwhile, Martin Kent prepares meticulously for the final of the Queen's Prize. After all that cleaning and adjustment, Martin, like an athlete who warms and stretches his muscles, warms up his rifle on the 0 range. In the centenary year, the centenary photograph of the Queen's 100. With minutes to go to the final, Martin Kent looks relaxed. 2 of David Murray's school friends have also qualified, Lenny Lenane and Charlotte Lemmer, both only 16. Equipment has to be checked scrupulously before the premier event. Even the trigger pressure is scrutinized before this final, each having to take the strain of a 1.5 kilogram weight.
Thank you.
There are just 2 distances today, from 900 and then 1,000 yards, extremely extreme tests in tricky winds that push the 100 to the limit. Shooting now on Stickledown Range, the trees shelter the low numbers. After Simon Blyther's disappointment in the Land Rover Grand Aggregate, he's looking for the compensation of a first ever Queen's Prize. Again, the draw is important. The wind is blowing from left to right. On course to win the valuable Musgrave Centenary rifle, the prize for the highest score with the lowest age, is Charlotte Lemmer. Martin Kent has a reasonable draw, but is making no impression on the leaders. Among those doing well, however, in the strong Canadian contingent, Des Van Ploeg, who scored 74 out of 75 at 900 yards. In half an hour, the identity of the winner of the Bisley Centenary Queen's Prize will be known. The last round, over 1,000 yards, is about to begin. From that distance, the aiming mark, 40 inches across, is little more than a black dot. As for the bullseye within it, a mere 24 inches across, that's invisible to the naked eye. Bill Baldwin of Ottawa takes advantage of a plum draw to lead the field, with the rest of the Canadian team challenging hard. Martin Kent has to move high up to the right, bearing the full brunt of the wind. As he fades, his brother Paul creeps onto the leaderboard. The wind and the luck of the draw could well decide who rides in the chair this year.
Well, my bracket that I was using was from 1 minute to nearly 7. So that's changed from 1 foot of deviation to 7 feet. That's how much the bullet was moving due to the wind. Down the other end, this would just be a guess, but that would be probably less than half variation because of the protection of the trees.
Bill Baldwin is an engineer from Ontario. He's won the Governor-General's Prize, the Canadian equivalent of the Queen's Prize, so he knows how to deal with the pressure. So too does his nearest rival, Britain's John Bloomfield, a winner of the Queen's Prize here in 1985. At the top of the leaderboard, the crowd can see that the Canadian is just ahead, but 2 errors with his 2 final shots, and Baldwin has to settle for a tie shoot with the gunsmith from the Midlands. And disappointment again for Blyther, the first to encourage England teammate Bloomfield.
Well, there wasn't a lot of wind down here, I must admit. Colin, thanks. Well, I had to come up about a minute during the course of the day. And in fact, I've not got anything above the waterline at all.
Baldwin, a Commonwealth gold medalist, now tries to clear his mind again for the 5-shot tie shoot for the greatest prize in his sport. Baldwin on target 25, Bloomfield on 26. Head to head, the perfect finale to an historic fortnight. But the former champion is ruthless, with 5 bulls out of 5, and the Queen's Prize is his again. So, in this 100th Bisley, a British gunsmith wins. His colleagues chair him off as Bisley's Queen's Prize winner has always been chaired off. A chair that's borne soldiers, sailors and airmen, dentists, policemen and computer experts, Australians, Canadians and New Zealanders, all part of a tradition that is one of the oldest and most respected in the sporting world. The Queen is informed who has won her prize, and that traditional cheque for £250 will go to John Bloomfield. Not a huge amount of money in 1990, but the honour is just as sought after, just as valuable, and just as treasured as the original Queen's Prize 130 years ago.